I was in Las Vegas with some friends, and we went to the Luxor casino, the Egyptian-themed casino. And they have, in this casino, this mock-up of King Tut's tomb. And it was like a museum tour, but it was an audio tour. And this was the first audio tour I'd ever been on, where you put on your headset, you press play, and the voice in your headset is telling you what you're looking at. And you could rewind, you could pause to take a break, you could fast forward if it gets really boring. And at the very end of that tour, I thought, this would be a really cool way to structure a book. I've never seen this, where instead of chapter 1, you would have cassette 1, side A, and you would have 2 narrators. You would have the recorded voice, and you would have the thoughts of somebody listening to that voice. And I thought it was so unique, and I really wanted to use it someday, but I didn't want to waste it where it was just a gimmick. I wanted to use it where it actually enhanced whatever story I was trying to tell. So I held on to it for years. Around the same time, I think it was just actually a couple months after this, something else happened. A close relative of mine attempted suicide. And she was the same age as Hannah Baker. She was a junior in high school. And thankfully, almost miraculously, she survived. And because of that, she and I, over the years, have had the chance to talk about how she got to that place where she felt ending her life was the only way out of her pain. And these conversations we had were very eye-opening for both of us. For me, I found out about things she was dealing with that I didn't know about, or that were much worse than I suspected. And she was dealing with a lot. But at the same time, on her end, one of the things was that she didn't think anybody in her life really, truly, deeply cared about her or loved her. And she would do some of the things the girl in the book does. She would, drop little hints that she knew people should pick up on. And if they didn't pick up on them, or if they didn't take them as seriously as she felt, she would say, see, nobody really cares. So she ended up taking a bunch of pills, wound up in the hospital. And now she was surrounded by people that she knows absolutely love her, because everybody, of course, is telling her. But at the same time, these people are also upset at her a little bit for not doing her part in reaching out and making sure, when she did reach out, that people understood exactly what she was going through. So again, these are very eye-opening conversations. And so we have the subject matter, we also have the structure there right around the same time, but it was actually 9 years later before I finally came up with the idea for 13 Reasons Why. And when I came up with the idea, I was fascinated by it, and I thought that was the best way to tell this type of a story, but I was also really nervous about writing it, because, like I said, I was writing funny books, and that was because I like to read funny books. And I actually don't like sad books. And so I was afraid, if here I am writing this book, that if I picked it up, I probably wouldn't want to read it. So I felt, if I'm going to write this, I have something I'm trying to say, and I'm going to be dealing with a lot of issues in this book, and they're just going to be dealt with naturally. My goal then, as the writer, is to make it so somebody like myself, once they open the book, can't put it down. So I wanted to write this very serious book as a suspense novel. And so what I did was I kind of looked to my favorite book, which is also, I think, the most suspenseful book ever written, as kind of my model on how to write a suspense book. Have any of you ever read this?
I love that book.
Starring lovable 4-year-old Grover. This is the most suspenseful, terrifying book you will ever read, especially when you're a really young kid and you can't read, so one of your parents is reading it to you. And even though there's not many words, I'm not going to read every word, but I still want to go through it with you. And so you can start to realize this is what I had in mind when I was writing 13 Reasons Why. I want to try this kind of very suspenseful book. Basically, it starts with Grover saying, wait, did that say there's a monster at the end of this book? I'm scared of monsters, so here's what we're going to do. Close the book. Don't turn the page. Because if you never turn the page, we never get to the end of the book. That's where the monster is. Problem solved. So at this time, I can't read. I'm sitting on my mom's lap, and she's reading it to me. I'm like, and Grover was like one of my heroes. So I said, yeah, we have plenty of books. Shut the book, Mom. And my mom's like, no, somebody spent a long time working on this book. We're going to read it. So my mom turns the page, and Grover freaks out. I freak out. So Grover says, okay, if you're not going to listen to me, I'm going to tie the pages down so you won't be able to turn them. And I'm thinking, thank you, Grover. And my mom, though, turns the page. She's stronger than either I thought or Grover thought. So Grover says, okay, you're not going to listen to me, you're going to play that way? All right. You're obviously stronger than, you can break ropes. I'm going to nail boards to the pages. You won't be able to turn the page then. My mom turns the page, makes a mess, and then I see my mom reaching for the corner of the page again. And this was the first time in my life I ever thought, I think my mom hates me. She doesn't, just so you know. Turns the page, brick wall. There's no way you can tear down a brick wall. Oh, you can't? So now Grover is really freaking out, going, the next page is the last page. Please, please, please don't bring the monster. And now look, if you can make a blue Muppet sweat like that, he's terrified. So I am now absolutely terrified of what's on the next page. But I can see the little evil look in my mom's eye. As it turns out, Grover is the monster in the book. And you were so silly for being so afraid. And then he says, oh, I'm so embarrassed. So this, it is, when you're really young, the most terrifying book ever. But the cool thing actually about this book, though, is it is very terrifying the first time, but once you get through it, you're in on the joke. So then the next time you read it, it's this really empowering book, and you're able to go, it's okay, little blue dude, we'll get through this together. So whenever I was feeling empowered or confident, I would pull out this book. I still pull out this book quite often. But it is the perfect example, in a very basic way, of how you write a suspense book. Because the main character in the book is kind of who the reader is supposed to identify with. So as you go through the book, and the main character gets more and more tense and worried, then hopefully the reader will too. But you still have this curiosity, so you really still need to get through to find out what's going to happen. And you make things worse and worse. You go from rope to nailed wood to brick wall. But then at the end, after all you've put the reader and the main character through, it's really nice of the author if you can let them close the book on kind of a nice place where they can feel okay going back into the world. So that's what I was going to do. Knew what I was going to say, knew the issues I was going to deal with, but I wanted to write it as a suspense book. And I knew, because of that, pacing is very important with suspense novels. So I knew I needed to know exactly how many reasons Hannah was going to describe early on, so I knew how to pace myself.